Good afternoon and welcome to Probate Court 2, our live streaming. So while I'm going to ask you to meet your burden under Texas law, please don't go into specifics such as for the protection of your client as well as the decedent. And this is the Janet, is it Deaver, is that correct?
That's correct, Judge.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Dyer, you are on mute, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Your name is Brenda Dyer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you filed this application for probate, the will of your mother, Janet Deaver, is that right?
Correct.
And she passed away on November 13th, 2020 at the age of 82 years old, is that right?
Yes.
And she was a resident of Tarrant County at the time of her death, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and your mother left a will dated December 11th, 2015, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and you've reviewed a copy of that will, and do you have one in front of you today?
Yes, I do. I have it right here.
Okay, and the signature purported to be your mother's, is that your mother's signature on that will?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And
that
I looked
will
ahead
was
of time.
okay, and that will was witnessed and self-proved, is that right?
I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, well we'll move on. So the your mother never revoked that will to the best of your knowledge, correct?
Correct.
And after she made that will, she had no children. She had adopted or had no additional children. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And after she signed the will, no marriage of hers was terminated through divorce or death. Correct?
No.
Okay. And
that's correct.
That's correct. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
And that's fine. And you and your sister are the sole beneficiaries named in the will. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the will named you to serve as independent executor. Is that right?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, you are qualified to serve as an executor. Is that right?
Yes.
In other words, you've never been convicted of a felony or been adjudicated by a court to be mentally incapacitated. Is that right?
That's correct. I have not.
Okay. And a necessity exists to administrate your mother's estate. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're asking the court to admit your mother's will to probate and grant you letters testamentary. Is that right?
That's correct.
Pass a witness, Judge.
Ms. Dyer, first of all, self-proved wills, I wouldn't expect you to know what that is. Let me explain it just so you know since it came up. That means that there were two witnesses to your mother's signature. And if you look at the back page of her will, it's called a self-proving affidavit. And they certified that the witnesses were 14, she was 18, she was signing it in her presence, knew what her will was and who she was giving her assets to. So that's just what the self-proving affidavit means.
Okay.
Were you in possession of your mother's original will after she passed away?
I had it beforehand. Yes.
Okay. And you delivered that to your attorney?
Yes.
And it's your understanding he delivered it to the court, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so what you've been looking at today, is that a true and correct copy of the original?
It is.
All right.
I looked at it ahead of time. Do you want me to review it now?
I'm actually going to show you what I believe to be the original.
Okay.
The first page. And then
Yes.
Here's that self-proving affidavit, the last page that we talked about. Does that appear to be the original?
Yes. It's. Let me look. Yes, it sure is. It looks like it.
And a couple other items that would disqualify you, but I'm going to ask them in an affirmative manner. Do you still live here in Texas?
Yes, I do.
And you're over the age of 18, correct?
Unfortunately, yes.
Thank you. Just a hair like a. I will find that Janet Esther Deaver was a resident of Tarrant County when she passed away, and you have proved up her will in accordance with Texas law. I'll admit her will to probate, and I'll find you a proper person to serve as independent executrix. If you'll raise your right hand one more time. Do you, Brenda Dyer, solemnly swear that the writing which has been offered for probate is the last will and testament of Janet Esther Deaver, so far as you know or believe, and will you well and truly perform all the duties of independent executrix of her will and her estate?
Yes, I understand, and yes, I will.
Thank you. I'm going to send the order along with some information to your attorney. He's going to that's going to tell you your rights and obligations as an independent executrix, but it doesn't substitute for him, and I trust you'll continue to work together.
Okay.
All right. Thank y'all very much. I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good afternoon. If you are joining us on YouTube, welcome to Probate Court 2. This is our typical Monday morning, just prove-ups of uncontested wills, or I guess uncontested prove-ups, offering for administration and requesting independent administration, as well as some armuniments of title. Typically, we would do 3 every 15 minutes when we are in person, but Zoom has slowed us down a little bit, although it has allowed us to continue. And we are allowing people to come in person. You're absolutely welcome to watch, but recording and or reproduction are prohibited. You can be held in contempt of court, which can include fines and or jail time. So we have a few minutes before our next hearing, so I'm going to go and get some work done, and I'll see you guys back here in just a little bit. Good afternoon and welcome to Probate Court 2.
Good afternoon, Judge.
Is Mr. Britt with you?
Yes, we're in close quarters, but he's right next to me.
Okay.
So we'll swap seats.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Good afternoon, sir. If you will please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Harrell.
Would you state your name for the court?
Michael Wayne Britt,
And what is your relationship to the decedent, Paula Creed Britt?
stepson.
And you are the applicant in this matter, is that correct?
Correct.
And are you over the age of 18?
I am.
Are you a resident of the state of Texas?
I am.
Is it true that Paula Creed Britt died on October 6th, 2020?
It is.
And is it also correct that she was 80 years old at the time of her death?
I believe she was.
Okay. And at the time of Paula Creed Britt's death, was she domiciled and residing in Tarrant County, Texas?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to ask you a few questions about her family history. My understanding is, well, let me rephrase that. Was she married only once?
Yes.
And was that marriage to your father, Joseph Ronald Britt?
Yes, it was.
And from the marriage of Joseph Ronald Britt and Paula Creed Britt, were any children born or adopted?
No.
Did Paula Creed Britt have children from any other relationship?
No.
Okay. And is it true that the decedent owned real and personal property at the time of her death?
Yes.
And that there exists a necessity for the administration of her estate?
Yes.
Okay. You have provided me a document purported to be the last will and testament of Paula Creed Britt, which I've filed with the court. I have a copy of a document which purports to be her will. Would you identify that document for the court?
This appears to be the will that she left for us to read, so.
Okay. And that will is the document you have before you, that's 7 pages, is that correct?
I believe it is. Yes,
And would you turn to the last page?
I will. Okay.
Do you recognize that signature as being the signature of Paula Creed Britt?
I do.
And were you familiar with the signature of Paula Creed Britt?
I was.
And you became familiar with her signature during her lifetime, is that correct?
Right.
And are those her initials on each page of that document?
I believe they are.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you are named independent executor in the will, is that correct?
Yes.
And to the best of your knowledge, was the last will and testament ever revoked?
No.
Were any children born or adopted by the decedent after making of the will?
No.
Was decedent divorced after making the will?
No.
Is the state of Texas or a state governmental agency named as a devotee in the will?
No.
Is a charitable organization named as a devotee in the will?
No.
Now, Mr. Britt, have you ever been convicted of a felony?
No.
Have you ever been declared incompetent by a court of law?
No.
Is there any reason why you cannot serve as executor?
No.
I will pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Britt, I have what I believe to be the original will that you delivered to Mr. Harrell that he delivered to the court. This is the first page, and the initials at the bottom are in blue.
Right.
And then this is the last page. Does this appear to be the original will you delivered to Mr. Harrell?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. I will find that Paula Creed Britt was a resident of Tarrant County when she passed away, and you have proved up her will in accordance with Texas law. I'll admit her will to probate, and I'll find you're a proper person to serve as independent executor. Will you please raise your right hand one more time?
I will.
Do you, Michael Wayne Britt, solemnly swear that the writing which has been offered for probate is the last will and testament of Paula Creed Britt, so far as you know or believe? And will you well and truly perform all the duties of independent executor of her will and her estate?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to send the order along with some information to Mr. Harrell. He's going to forward that to you. That's going to tell you your rights and obligations as an independent executor, but it doesn't substitute for him, and I trust y'all will continue to work together.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank
Sounds
y'all
good.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Judge.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your week.
You too, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, if you are joining us on YouTube, welcome to Probate Court 2. You're absolutely welcome to watch, but recording and or reproduction are prohibited. You can be held in contempt of court. Unfortunately, we had a cancellation, so there's going to be a few minutes for our next hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and get some work done. But I would encourage you, if you are setting hearings, Zoom has really backed us up, And so please, if you are not ready, do not set your hearing because you are taking time away from other citizens of Tarrant County. And we are certainly, myself and Associate Judge Lynn Kelly, trying to work people through as quickly as possible when their estates are ready. So I'm going to go get some work done, and I'll see y'all back here in just a few minutes.
Hi, Judge Allen.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good. Mr. Robinson, you are on mute, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And while you're doing that, Ms. Allen, I'll remind you we are live streaming. So if you will make sure you meet your burden under Texas law, but not get into specifics such as addresses for the protection of Mr. Robinson as well as our decedent, and this is the Robinson estate.
Okay.
Mr. Robinson, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
Mr. Robinson, you are Patrick Robinson, the applicant who signed the application for probate of a will in this case. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that the decedent, who is your mother, Teresa Robinson, died March 1st, 2021 in Frisco, Collin County, Texas, at the age of 86 years?
Yes, unfortunately.
And 4 years have not gone by since her death. Isn't that right? And isn't it correct that the decedent owned property in and lived in and had a fixed place of residence in Tarrant County as of the date of her death?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And isn't it also true that your mother gave you a copy of her will that was dated March 28, 2020, and that you've read it and you're familiar with its contents?
Yes.
And isn't it also true that your mother had her original will delivered to the Tarrant County Probate Court clerk for safekeeping?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point, do you have the original will to put on the screen?
Well, I'm going to ask him some questions at the very end.
Okay, will do. Now, isn't it true, Mr. Robinson, that there is necessity for the administration of the estate in order to gather the assets, your mother's assets, to wind up and pay any debts, if any, and to make gifts to the beneficiaries who she's designated in her will?
Yes.
Isn't it also true that there were no children who were born to or adopted by the decedent after the date of the will?
That's correct, yes.
And isn't it true that the decedent was married as of the date of her death to your father, Burnham Robinson?
Yes.
And Mr. Robinson is her surviving spouse. Isn't that correct?
Fortunately, yes.
And isn't it true that the marriage to your father and the decedent was the only marriage that she ever had, and that no marriage was dissolved after the date that the will was executed?
That is correct.
And isn't it true that the will does not make the state, nor any governmental entity of the state, nor any charitable organization as a beneficiary or a devotee under the will? They're not getting any part of her estate.
That is correct.
Isn't it also true, Mr. Robinson, that you are an upstanding citizen of the state of Texas?
I am.
And you've never been convicted of a felony, have you?
I have not.
Have you been convicted of any crime involving what I'll call moral turpitude, something that involves dishonesty, misappropriation? Not at all.
I have
Is that
not.
right?
I have
Very
not.
good. And finally, you are a resident of Texas, but you live in Collin County, correct?
That's correct.
And isn't it also true that you're not aware of any reason that you would not make a suitable executor to serve as executor of your mother's estate?
Correct.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, were you in possession of your mother's original will after she passed away?
Yes. No, the original, you mean other than the copy? I have a copy. The original's downtown.
Okay, but who had the original after your mother passed away? Oh, y'all said she filed it with the clerk, didn't you?
Yeah, I answered you. It was downtown.
Okay. Sorry, it's very unusual that people actually file their clerks, and Ms. Allen did elicit that testimony. Thank you. So we have had actually, and I'm going to look at that, we have had this original since she filed it with our clerk. And you would recognize your mother's signature, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to show you on page 8, the original will. What I'm pointing to, is that your mother's signature?
It is, yeah.
Thank you. And actually, I see that Ms. Allen was a witness on this will as well. I will find that Teresa L. Robinson was a resident of Tarrant County when she passed away, and you have proved up her will in accordance with Texas law. I'll admit her will to probate, and I'll find you're a proper person to serve as independent executor. If you'll raise your right hand one more time. Do you, Patrick Robinson, solemnly swear that the writing which has been offered for probate is the last will and testament of Teresa L. Robinson, so far as you know or believe? And will you well and truly perform all the duties of independent executor of her will and her estate?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to send the order along with some information to Miss Allen. She's going to send that to you. That's going to tell you your rights and obligations as an independent executor, but it does not substitute for her, and I trust you'll continue to work with her on this matter.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Judge Allen. Good to see
You're
you.
welcome. Good to see you too.
Leave.
And we have a little bit of a short afternoon. There's some other things going on that need my attention, but I will see you guys back. We're typically on Facebook under Judge Brooke Allen is where we typically live stream, but we were trying to get on do some YouTube videos. I am in the courtroom, and I have actually been since this time last year. It's just easier to work in the courtroom, but I know people enjoy watching Zoom, so we'll continue to Zoom whenever there are matters that we can do that. Otherwise, people are coming in, especially for contested evidentiary matters. Those are just better done in person. So I hope you all have a great week.